Ethan didn't remember how long he sat in the Jeep, engine idling, headlights cutting two pale tunnels through the darkness. His hands were locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white, his pulse still racing from what he had seen in the house. The whisper echoed in his head. "You cannot leave." He slammed the car into drive and sped down the road, gravel spraying behind him. The trees blurred together, their twisted branches arching overhead like claws. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Following. Only when the lights of Hollow Pines appeared ahead did he slow down. The sheriff's office was the only building still lit at this hour. Ethan stumbled inside, the bell above the door ringing sharply. The smell of stale coffee and old paper filled the room. Behind the desk sat a woman in her late 30s, dark hair pulled into a tight ponytail, eyes sharp despite the hour. She looked up slowly. "Can I help you?" she asked. Ethan swallowed. "Something's wrong, in the woods. In my house." The woman studied him for a long moment before standing. "Name," she said. "Ethan Walker." Her expression changed. Just slightly. But enough. "You shouldn't have come back," she said quietly. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "You know who I am?" She nodded. "Everyone in Hollow Pines does." She gestured toward a chair. "Sit, and listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "People who hear whispers from the forest usually don't live long enough to ask for help." Ethan's mouth went dry. "What about Abigail?" The sheriff's eyes flicked to the window, toward the dark outline of the trees beyond town. "No one ever found her body," she said. "And no one ever will." She paused. "Because whatever took her doesn't leave bodies behind." The sheriff closed the blinds before Ethan even realized she had moved. The soft click of plastic slats locking into place sounded far louder than it should have. "My name is Claire Monroe," she said. "Sheriff of Hollow Pines. And before you ask, yes, I remember Abigail." She crossed the room and unlocked a metal filing cabinet. It groaned in protest, like it hadn't been opened in years. She pulled out a thick folder and dropped it onto the desk between them. "Missing persons." Ethan's chest tightened. Claire opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Old reports and newspaper clippings yellowed with age. "Abigail Carter," Claire said. "Age 12. Disappeared walking home from your house." She slid another photo forward. "Daniel Price. Age 19. Gone 6 months later." Another. "Lily Morrison. 8 years old." Each photo felt like a punch to the gut. "All taken by the woods," Claire said. "Different years. Different circumstances, same ending." Ethan shook his head slowly. Why was this never in the news? Claire's jaw tightened. "Because the town asked us not to. That's not how the law works." She met his eyes. "It is when the alternative is panic." She flipped to the last page, a hand-drawn map. The Hollow Pines forest, circled in red. And in the center, marked with a crude symbol that made Ethan's stomach churn, was his childhood home. Claire tapped the symbol. "Your mother was the first to report whispers," she said. "Years before Abigail vanished." Ethan's breath caught. "That's not possible." "It is," Claire said. "And it gets worse." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Everyone who tried to leave after hearing them didn't make it past the tree line." Silence swallowed the room. Ethan suddenly understood something that made his skin crawl. "You're not investigating," he said. Claire gave a slow, humorless smile. "No," she replied. "I'm containing." From outside, somewhere deep in the town, a low sound drifted through the night air. Not quite a howl, not quite a whisper. Claire stiffened. "It knows you're awake now," she said, "and it knows you came to me." Ethan left the sheriff's office with the uneasy feeling that he had already made a mistake. The street was empty. Too empty. The few lamps along Main Street flickered, their light weak against the darkness pressing in from the edges of town. The forest loomed beyond the buildings, a solid black wall swallowing the horizon. He tried to tell himself he was tired. That fear was playing tricks on him. But the words Claire had spoken echoed in his mind. "It knows you're awake now." Ethan stopped at the gas station on the edge of town, the last place with lights before the road vanished into the trees. The sign buzzed overhead, one letter burnt out, casting the word gas in a sickly red glow. Inside, The clerk barely looked up. "Filling up?" the man muttered. "Yeah," Ethan replied, his voice tight. As he stepped back outside, the night felt heavier. The air was still. No wind, no insects. Even the forest had gone silent. That's when he heard it. A whisper. Not from behind him, from inside his head. "Ethan." He froze. His heart hammered as he slowly turned in a circle. The parking lot was empty. The clerk sat behind the counter, staring at his phone. "You came back." Ethan clutched his temples. "No," he whispered. "This isn't real." The gas pump clicked, shutting off abruptly. The lights flickered. For a brief moment, reflected in the glass of the station window, Ethan saw something standing behind him. Tall, too thin, its limbs bent at impossible angles. When he spun around, the parking lot was empty again, but the whisper returned closer now. Intimate. "Your mother hears us too." The clerk screamed. Ethan turned just in time to see the man being dragged backward, across the floor, by something Ethan couldn't see. Blood smeared across the tiles as the lights exploded overhead, plunging the station into darkness. The scream cut off. Silence. Ethan ran. Behind him, the forest exhaled, and for the first time since returning to Hollow Pines, Ethan understood the truth. The whispers weren't calling him into the woods. They were welcoming him home. By morning, Hollow Pines acted like nothing had happened. Ethan stood across the street from the gas station, watching yellow police tape flutter lazily in the breeze. The windows were dark, no reporters, no flashing lights, just Sheriff Monroe's cruiser parked at an angle that blocked the entrance. A handwritten sign had already been taped to the door. Closed for renovations. Renovations. A man had been dragged screaming into nothingness less than 12 hours ago. Ethan felt sick. "Go home," Claire said behind him. He turned sharply. She hadn't bothered with pleasantries. "There was blood everywhere," Ethan said. "You can't just—" "I can," she cut in. "And I will." She glanced around, lowering her voice. "You think you're the only one it's watching?" Ethan stared at her. "Then why don't you warn people?" Claire's eyes hardened. "Because they wouldn't listen," she said. "They never do. They hear a noise in the woods, they see something in the dark, and they tell themselves it's nothing." She stepped closer. "And the ones who believe me don't last." Ethan felt the whisper stir again, soft and patient. "She lies." He winced, clutching his head. Claire noticed. "You hear it now," she said. It wasn't a question. She led him behind the station, where the forest pressed, so close it felt like the trees were leaning in to listen. "There are rules," she said. "They were written by people who died learning them." She held up one finger. "Rule 1, never follow the voice. Rule 2, never answer it, not out loud, not in your head. Rule 3, she said quietly, don't trust anyone who claims to understand it completely." Ethan swallowed. "And you?" Claire met his gaze. "I'm still alive," she said. "That's all the proof I have." As she walked away, Ethan realized something horrifying. The whisper wasn't angry. It was amused. She forgot the last rule. Ethan stood alone, surrounded by trees that no longer looked like trees at all. They looked like witnesses. He drove until the road thinned into cracked asphalt and then into dirt, stopping only when the trees grew so close they scraped the sides of the Jeep. The air here felt different, thicker, damp, heavy with the smell of rot and wet soil. This was the restricted zone Claire hadn't mentioned on any map. But Ethan remembered it. A place his mother had forbidden him to enter as a child. The whisper stirred again, not urgent now, gentle, curious. "You remember." He shut the engine off and sat in the dark, listening to the forest breathe. Somewhere far inside the trees, something snapped. Not a branch, too deliberate. Ethan grabbed the flashlight and stepped out. The path appeared only when the light hit it. A narrow trail pressed unnaturally flat, as if many feet had walked it in single file. He followed it deeper, each step carrying him farther from the sounds of the town, farther from anything human. The cabin emerged suddenly. Small, collapsing, half swallowed by vines and moss. Ethan's heart pounded. He had been here before. He knew he had. Inside, the air was stale. Dust coated everything except one object sitting neatly on a table in the center of the room. A cassette recorder. His hands trembled as he picked it up. A strip of masking tape had been stuck to the side, handwriting faded but unmistakable. M. Walker. Mom, he whispered. The whisper responded. Pleased. She wanted you to hear it. Ethan pressed play. Static hissed, then breathing, shaky, afraid. If you're listening to this, it means I failed, his mother's voice said. Ethan's knees nearly gave out. It doesn't hunt like an animal. It waits. It listens, and when you hear it, it's already inside you. A pause. A sob. I tried to leave. I tried to take you with me. But it won't let its witnesses go. The tape crackled. Ethan, if you hear the whisper, don't fight it. That's how it learns you. The whisper surged, wrapping around his thoughts. She learned too late. The recorder clicked off. Behind him, the cabin door creaked open. Ethan didn't turn around. Because he already knew. The voice standing behind him wasn't whispering anymore. It was speaking out loud. Ethan stood frozen, every nerve screaming at him not to turn around. The cabin door creaked wider. Cold air crawled across the back of his neck, carrying the smell of damp earth and something older, something that didn't belong to this century. You shouldn't be here, a voice said. Not the whisper. A human voice. Ethan spun around. Sheriff Claire Monroe stood in the doorway, her gun lowered but ready. Her face was pale, jaw tight, eyes locked on something behind Ethan. Claire, he said hoarsely. It's here. I know, she replied. That's why I followed you. The flashlight on the table flickered, then went out. The darkness wasn't empty. It moved. Something unfolded itself from the far corner of the cabin, where the shadows were thickest. Its shape was wrong. Too tall, too narrow, as if it had learned what a person looked like, but never quite perfected it. Its head tilted, and when it spoke, it used his mother's voice. Ethan, Claire fired. The sound was deafening in the small space. The bullet struck the thing's chest and passed through it. The thing didn't flinch. Instead, it stepped forward into the faint moonlight spilling through the doorway. Ethan saw it clearly now. Its skin looked like stretched paper. Veins pulsed beneath it, forming shapes that almost resembled faces, mouths. Eyes that opened and closed too slowly. You hear us because you were born listening, it said. Claire's hands shook. You said it couldn't leave the forest. I lied, the thing replied calmly. You needed hope. Claire stared at it in horror. You promised if we fed it stories, fear, silence. The thing smiled. A terrible, broken imitation of a smile. You fed me witnesses. Ethan understood. You let people disappear, he said. So it wouldn't take more. Claire didn't deny it. I was buying time, she whispered. The thing turned to her. And now your time is over. The lights in the cabin exploded outward, glass shredding the air. Claire screamed as something invisible wrapped around her, lifting her off the floor. Ethan shouted her name, but the sound died in his throat. The thing leaned close to her face. You forgot the last rule, it whispered. And Claire Monroe vanished. Not dragged, not torn apart, simply gone. The forest exhaled. The thing turned back to Ethan. You can still leave, it said gently, but you will carry us with you. Ethan backed toward the door, tears streaking his face. No, he said. I won't become you. The thing's eyes softened. You already are. The whisper surged, louder than ever. And then, silence. Ethan found himself standing alone in the cabin. No Claire. No creature. No sound. Only the recorder on the floor, cracked but intact. It began to play on its own. Episode 2 complete, a voice whispered. Not his mother's. Not the thing's. His own.